2 to 1. It has 12% magnesium. You know, there's unscrupulous people in the world. They go to Okinawa and they dig the coral out of the ground, and that coral has less than 1% magnesium. So if you want the perfect 2 to 1 magnesium to calcium, you will get the marine grade coral calcium.
Now, you've documented how calcium and vitamin D can cure disease. Now, let's talk about another specific disease like leukemia. Is that curable with coral calcium and vitamin D?
Yes.
Now, you could never say that before, but now you're saying it. But how can you say it when there are teams of doctors here, and if you had them here, they'd say that's not true?
Yes, but the doctors aren't scientists. They have absolutely no scientific training. They're taught drugs by the drug industry. And did you know that doctors don't even get 5 minutes training in nutrition? And this is what we're talking about, nutrition. And now they're the experts on nutrition with no training.
But they're doctors, and they went to med school.
Yeah, but they were trained by the drug industry, once again. They were not trained by scientists.
So you're making your statement based on what?
I'm making my statement based on the fact that there's massive, massive scientific documentation out there, and it all says that calcium, vitamin D, and other nutrients reverse, inhibit, prevent all these diseases. It's not me saying it, and when you see the credentials of these guys, my God, you're going to be super impressed. These are the world's best.
So you have a term that you mentioned, could be toxic.
Well, that's what the FDA says, could be toxic. And the reason they say that is if they say it is toxic, the community will come crashing down on them because there's massive scientific proof that no amount of vitamin D is toxic. They like to use could be because they have to scare the American people into thinking that vitamin D could be toxic, so instead of vitamin D, they buy drugs. I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's talk again about cancer. Let's talk about the epidemic, and let's talk about the numbers.
All right.
Back in 1972, you mentioned something about President Nixon?
Well, what happened was, you have to understand, you go back to the turn of the century, it was 3% cancer. In 1950, when my co-author, Dr. Reese, began his practice, it was 20%. Then Nixon declared war on cancer, 27%. Then 1999, it rose to 39%. Wow. They're expecting it to hit 50% by the year 2020. And here we are today. We've got a solution. We can prevent that from happening, but no one's listening.
So you're sitting here today saying that cancer can be eliminated. All cancers can be cured?
Yes, all cancers can be eliminated. Otto Warburg himself said there's no disease that we know more about the cause or the cure than cancer. He said, but because of your agnostics, these godless men in the FDA and the AMA, millions of Americans are going to have to die needlessly. Now, since he said that in 1966 to an audience in Berkeley, California, 30 million Americans have died. John Wayne didn't have to die. Steve McQueen didn't have to die. Michael Landon didn't have to die. They had what Warburg said was needless deaths. If they had come to us, they'd all be alive today.
Okay, so what would you say if I told you I had a friend who was diagnosed with prostate cancer?
I would say read the books, the information that's in there. I've had hundreds of people this year alone come to me with prostate cancer. They're all happy and healthy today.
By taking supplements?
Well, not just taking supplements. You see, you have to get God's nutrient, the sun, because the sun produces all these hormones and enzymes, all of which help you cure cancer and cure other diseases.
Which is vitamin D.
Well, it's mainly vitamin D, but you see, behind your eyes is your pituitary, pineal, and hypothalamus glands, and they produce the hormones. And they need UV radiation, in other words, the sunlight. You've got to take off your glasses, let the sun hit your face. I mean, the Eskimos, they don't sunbathe, but they don't have disease either. The sun hits their eyes, and they cure disease. The one common denominator that all these people have is that they drink the water that comes from the melting glaciers. This water is white. It looks like white mud. They call it milk of the mountains, and they drink it, and every quart contains 17,000 milligrams of calcium. That's 17 times as much as is in a quart of milk. Now, they don't drink 1 quart a day. They drink 4 or 5 quarts. So all these people get 100,000 milligrams of calcium. Now, your doctor says more than 1,000 could kill you, so that's obviously wrong. You can never get too much calcium, just too little calcium.
So now that we can all live happy and healthy lives, What about the longevity for Black America?
Well, if Black Americans would take coral calcium, get out in the sun, and take vitamin D, I believe that instead of dying 7 years before the whites, they live 7 years longer than the whites. And they would live happy and healthy, disease-free lives.
Okay. And you mentioned also that Oprah Winfrey did a show on Okinawa.
Yeah, her show, the main theme of the show was the youth. I mean, a man who's 95 years old does the work of a 25-year-old. They're muscular. They don't grow old. Mm-hmm. And her experts say it's because of the sedentary lifestyle, the fresh food, and the fish. But you know, if you go a few miles away on the other islands, you will find that the people with the same sedentary lifestyle, the same fish and fruit, they die at 60 with cancer. So obviously the American experts aren't correct. The Japanese experts, the ones who said it was coral calcium, they're correct. Oprah's experts are wrong.
Okay. The Hunzas of Pakistan.
Yes. Well, they're one of the most famous cultures that live to be long. I mean, they have so many people. They have people 140 years old, believe it or not. They don't have the records, but they are 140 years old. And the thing is that the Hunza men don't like to have children until they're in their 70s when they say they're mature enough to have kids. Well, ladies, don't worry, because these 70-year-old men have the bodies of 30 years old. So they're very youthful, just like in Okinawa. These men drink the water from the melting glaciers. It comes out of the mountains. It looks like white mud. They drink a quart a day, and every quart contains 17,000 milligrams of calcium. That's 17 times as much as is in a quart of milk. Mm-hmm. And they drink several quarts a day. They end up consuming 100,000 milligrams of calcium every day, and your doctor says more than 1,000 could be harmful to your health. Well, that's obviously nonsense. Also, in China, we have the famous Bamas, and they routinely live to be 100. And then in the Azerbaijanis in Russia, they also routinely live to be 100. And the one thing all these cultures have in common is the massive consumption of calcium and the fact that they spend 6, 7, 8 hours in the sun every day.
So is this consistent with, I know you did some research here from the Johns Hopkins University?
Well, yes. What this is Johns Hopkins University in 1972, they made the discovery that your DNA will not replicate. Now, your DNA is in your body, and what it does is it replicates and produces new body parts and keeps you young and healthy. Well, they discovered DNA will not replicate unless you smother it in calcium. So, you know, this morning you didn't get your calcium, your DNA isn't smothered, it doesn't replicate. So that means you're growing older 5 times faster than God intended. But these people, their DNA is constantly smothered, so the 70-year-old Hunza has children in his 70s.
Wow. Bob, it has been a great pleasure having you on this show today, because you've increased the knowledge span of all the individuals who participated and who watched this show. So are there any last words you want to share with us?
Yes, I just want all Americans to read my books, to learn that we have answers to terminate disease. I believe that together we can cure Black America first, then White America, then Canada, England, Australia, China, the whole world can be cured. God bless the America that I know and love, and may God bless each and every one of you. Goodbye, everybody.
We sure hope you enjoyed those bonus clips. Thank you, Bob. This is Kim Estes signing off. Cure America, cure the world.
This program was sponsored by barefootandhealthy.com.